Have you ever noticed how some people seem to attract wealth and abundance effortlessly, while others struggle their entire lives despite working twice as hard? What if I told you that the difference has nothing to do with luck, circumstances, or even hard work, but rather with something happening silently inside their consciousness, something most people completely overlook? There's a secret language your inner world speaks right before abundance enters your life. It's not found in affirmations, written on sticky notes, not in vision boards hanging on your wall, and certainly not in hoping and wishing for things to change someday. What I'm talking about are actual, tangible shifts happening within your consciousness. Shifts that signal with absolute certainty that your financial reality is about to transform. Florence Scovel Shinn discovered something profound that changed everything we thought we knew about manifesting wealth. She found that every single person who successfully attracted significant abundance experienced very specific internal signs first. Not coincidences in the outer world, not lucky breaks or chance encounters, but unmistakable transformations in their state of being, in how they felt, how they thought, and how they moved through their day. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Here's what makes this absolutely revolutionary. Your consciousness doesn't just influence your reality, it creates it. When your inner world shifts into the feeling of already being abundant, your physical world has no choice but to rearrange itself to match that state. This isn't positive thinking or wishful manifestation. This is an immutable law, working behind the scenes whether you're aware of it or not. Has this ever happened to you? You've tried visualizing, affirming, working harder, doing all the right things to attract money, but nothing changes? You look at your bank account, and it's the same disappointing number. You wait for opportunities that never seem to come. You wonder why abundance flows so easily to others, but seems to avoid you like you're invisible. The reason is startling in its simplicity. You've been looking in the wrong place. You've been searching for signs in your external circumstances when the real signs, the ones that actually matter, are happening inside your consciousness. And most people miss them entirely because they don't know what to look for. Stay with me until the end of this video, because what you're about to discover might surprise you. I'm going to reveal the exact internal shifts that occur right before abundance manifests in your physical reality. These aren't metaphors or abstract concepts. They're real, recognizable changes in your state of being that you can identify within yourself right now. When you learn to recognize these signs, something remarkable happens. You'll stop wondering if abundance is coming. You'll stop desperately searching for proof. You'll simply know. And that knowing, that unshakable inner certainty, is what actually brings abundance into your world. So the question becomes, are these signs already present in your consciousness, or are you still operating from the old state that keeps abundance at a distance? Let's find out together. The fascinating thing about this law of consciousness is that it's been operating in your life since the day you were born, whether you knew about it or not. Think about that for a moment. Every experience you've had, every financial situation you found yourself in, every opportunity that came or didn't come, all of it was shaped by the state of consciousness you were occupying at the time. This isn't about blame or guilt. It's about recognizing a hidden truth that, once understood, gives you complete power over your financial destiny. Florence Scovel Shinn called this the law of assumption, and here's what makes it so liberating. It works regardless of whether you believe in it, understand it, or even know it exists. It's like gravity. You don't need to believe in it for it to affect you. But here's the transformation that changes everything. When you become consciously aware of this law and learn to work with it, deliberately, you stop being a victim of circumstances and become the master of your fate. You move from feeling helpless and at the mercy of external conditions to realizing you've had the power all along. Most people spend their entire lives in a state of constant striving, constantly chasing abundance, constantly feeling like they're one step behind where they need to be. They wake up worried about money. They check their accounts with anxiety. They make decisions from a place of fear and scarcity. This exhausting journey keeps abundance perpetually out of reach because the very act of chasing it confirms in consciousness that you don't have it. The energy of desperation repels the very thing you're trying to attract. If this resonated with you, subscribe to the channel so we can continue exploring these principles together. But something remarkable happens when you understand how consciousness truly works. There's a shift, a profound internal shift, that signals abundance is no longer something you're chasing, but something you're becoming. This shift manifests as an inner stillness, a deep calm that settles over you. It's not the stillness of giving up or passive waiting. It's something far more powerful. It's the stillness of knowing. It's resting in the assumption that what you desire is already yours, not in some distant future, but right now in consciousness. When you experience this stillness, you're no longer begging the universe for abundance. You're not desperately hoping it will come. You're not anxiously scanning your environment for signs that it's working. Instead, you feel a quiet certainty, an unshakable knowing that it's already done. This is the state where miracles happen, where opportunities appear seemingly out of nowhere, where money flows to you through unexpected channels. Now, I want to go even deeper into this revelation, because there's something critical most people misunderstand about this inner stillness, and it's costing them everything. If you're starting to see this truth clearly, write in the comments, "I'm ready to receive." The critical misunderstanding I mentioned is this. Most people confuse hoping with knowing, and that single confusion keeps them trapped in cycles of lack for years, sometimes their entire lives. On the surface, they might look similar. Both involve thinking about something you desire. Both can make you feel temporarily good, but the energy behind them, the impact on your consciousness, couldn't be more different. When you hope for abundance, what are you really saying? You're confessing to yourself and to the universe that you don't have it yet. Hope is beautiful in its own way, but it's fundamentally a statement of absence. It says, maybe one day, if I'm lucky, if the stars align, if I do everything perfectly, then perhaps I'll have what I want. Hope keeps your desire forever suspended in the future, always just out of reach, always dependent on external conditions that may or may not materialize. Knowing is an entirely different state of being. When you know something, there's no doubt, no question, no anxiety about whether it will happen. You know your name, don't you? You don't hope your name is what it is. You simply know it with absolute certainty. That's the same quality of certainty that must exist in your consciousness about your abundance. Knowing is the state of already having something before your physical senses can confirm it. It's living in the reality of fulfillment right now, not in some imagined future. This distinction might seem subtle, but it creates completely different realities. When you're hoping, you're constantly checking your bank account, checking for opportunities, checking for signs that it's working. You're looking for evidence in the external world to validate what you're trying to believe internally. And here's the revelation that changes everything. That very act of checking proves you don't truly know. If you genuinely felt abundant in consciousness, would you need to frantically search for proof in your physical circumstances? When your consciousness has truly shifted into the state of knowing, something extraordinary happens. You stop seeking confirmation in the physical world. You stop obsessively monitoring your external reality for signs of progress. Your inner world becomes so saturated with the reality of abundance, so completely filled with the feeling of already having it, that what appears in your outer circumstances becomes almost secondary. Not because you don't care about physical manifestation, but because you found something more real, more solid, more trustworthy than anything your five senses could ever show you. This is where the real transformation happens, where decisions shift from fear to faith, where your entire relationship with money and abundance fundamentally changes. The journey from hoping to knowing isn't about convincing yourself of something false. It's about touching something true within yourself that's been there all along, something your external circumstances have been hiding from you. And when you finally touch that truth, everything on the outside begins to rearrange itself to match what you've discovered on the inside. If this resonates with you, type in the comments, "I know it's already mine." Here's something powerful that happens when you reach that state of knowing, when your consciousness has truly assumed abundance as your reality. And opinions of others stop affecting you. Someone tells you your dream is impossible, that you're being unrealistic, that you should just accept your current financial situation. And instead of feeling defensive, instead of doubting yourself, instead of spending hours trying to convince them or prove your vision is valid, you simply smile and continue on your path. Their skepticism doesn't shake you, because you've touched something within yourself that's more real than their doubt. This unshakable certainty isn't arrogance or delusion. It's the natural result of living from a transformed state of consciousness. When you know something deeply, truly know it, external opinions become background noise. Think about it. If someone told you that you don't exist, would you argue with them? Would you feel the need to defend your existence? Of course not, because you know with absolute certainty that you exist. That same quality of knowing can exist about your abundance, about your worthiness, about your financial transformation. But there's another sign, perhaps even more revealing, that shows when this shift has genuinely occurred in your consciousness. It's something that happens automatically, without effort, and it's found in the most intimate space of your inner world, your mental conversations. Every single day, you have thousands of thoughts running through your mind. You talk to yourself constantly, creating narratives, imagining scenarios, rehearsing conversations, planning for the future. Most people never pay attention to the quality of these inner dialogues, and that's a critical mistake. When you're living from a state of lack, your inner speech reflects that reality. You catch yourself thinking, "I can't afford this." You imagine conversations where you have to explain why you don't have money. You rehearse excuses, plan for scarcity, worry about worst-case scenarios. You mentally prepare yourself for disappointment. These aren't just random thoughts. They're confirmations of the state you're occupying. They're your consciousness reinforcing the reality of limitation. But when your consciousness shifts into the state of abundance, your mental conversations transform automatically. You don't have to force it. You don't have to monitor every thought and correct it. Your inner speech naturally begins to assume abundance as fact. You find yourself thinking from wealth instead of toward it. You imagine conversations where you're discussing opportunities, making empowered decisions, celebrating wins. The shift happens behind the scenes of your awareness, revealing that something fundamental has changed in the way you relate to money and possibility. This transformation in your inner dialogue isn't something you create through discipline or willpower. It's the natural byproduct of occupying a new state. It's evidence that your consciousness has made the journey from hoping to knowing, from seeking to having. And when you notice this shift in yourself, when you catch your thoughts assuming abundance without effort, you're witnessing one of the clearest signs that your external reality is about to catch up with your internal one. If you've noticed your inner conversations starting to change, drop a comment saying, "My thoughts are shifting." Now, I want to reveal something that Florence Scovel Shinn called the ultimate secret, the one principle that, when truly understood and applied, makes everything else fall into place. It's so simple that most people overlook it, yet so powerful that it's responsible for every manifestation that has ever occurred. The secret is this: feeling is everything. Not visualization, not affirmations, not action steps. Feeling. The sensation of already having what you desire before it manifests physically is the actual creative force that brings abundance into your reality. This isn't about generating temporary excitement or pumping yourself up with positive emotions. It's about cultivating the specific feeling state of already being abundant right now, regardless of what your bank account shows or what your circumstances appear to be. When you can sustain this feeling, when you can rest in the sensation of financial security, freedom, and ease, Abundance is not on its way to you. It's already yours. The physical manifestation, the money showing up in your account, the opportunities arriving, these are merely the shadow following the substance. The substance is the feeling. The feeling is the reality. Most people have this backwards. They think the money will make them feel abundant, so they wait for the money to arrive before allowing themselves to feel good. But that's not how consciousness works. The feeling must come first. The feeling creates the circumstances, not the other way around. Your external world is always, without exception, a perfect mirror of your internal state. It's reflecting back to you what you truly feel to be true about yourself and your relationship with abundance. This is the law of consciousness, and it's been operating since the beginning of time. Your imagination creates reality. Whatever you assume to be true hardens into fact. What you feel to be real about yourself becomes your lived experience in the world. This isn't philosophy or spiritual theory. This is the actual mechanism by which your life unfolds. Every single thing you're experiencing right now, every financial circumstance, every limitation, every opportunity came from a state of consciousness you occupied, a feeling you sustained, an assumption you made about yourself and what's possible for you. If this shifted your perspective, hit that like button. It helps these teachings reach others who need them. The profound impact of understanding this cannot be overstated. It means you're not at the mercy of external forces. You're not waiting for the economy to improve, for your boss to give you a raise, for luck to find you. You're the one behind the scenes, running the entire show. Your consciousness is the director, and the external world is simply acting out the script you're writing with your feelings and assumptions. When you grasp this truth, when you really let it sink in, the entire journey transforms from one of helpless waiting to deliberate creation. The revelation here is that you don't need permission from anyone or anything to assume the feeling of abundance right now. You don't need to earn it, prove you're worthy of it, or wait until conditions are perfect. You can claim that feeling this very moment. And when you do, when you make that bold decision to feel abundant despite contrary evidence, you set into motion forces that must bring your assumption into physical form. If you're beginning to understand the power of feeling, write in the comments, "Feeling is my power." The reason so many people struggle, despite knowing about manifestation, despite doing visualizations and affirmations, is that they're caught in what I call the lack trap. They're trying to create abundance while simultaneously feeling the absence of it. Every morning they visualize wealth, but the moment they open their eyes and check their bank account, they feel poor. They affirm prosperity, but spend the rest of their day worried about bills. They imagine financial freedom, but their dominant emotional state is anxiety about money. This creates a fundamental contradiction in consciousness that makes manifestation impossible. You cannot manifest from the energy of lack. You cannot create wealth while feeling poor. It's like trying to drive forward with your foot on the brake. You might rev the engine, you might make noise, you might even move a little, but you're fighting against yourself. The universe doesn't respond to your words or your visualizations. It responds to your state of being, to what you genuinely feel to be true. And if what you truly feel is scarcity, no amount of positive thinking will override that core assumption. Here's where the transformation becomes accessible to everyone, where this entire journey opens up in the most liberating way possible. You don't earn abundance through good behavior. You don't have to be spiritually pure or morally perfect. You don't need to deserve it through suffering or prove your worthiness through sacrifice. Abundance is simply a state of consciousness, and any person, regardless of their past mistakes, their current circumstances, or their perceived limitations, can assume that state right now. This is such a crucial revelation because so many people disqualify themselves before they even begin. They think, "I've made too many bad decisions with money," or "I don't have the right education," or "People from my background don't become wealthy," or "I failed too many times." These are just stories, narratives you've been telling yourself that have kept you locked in a particular state. But your past has no power over your future unless you continue to Assume it does. Your current circumstances have no authority over what you can become unless you grant them that authority. The hidden truth is that consciousness is the only requirement. When you understand that abundance is a state you can occupy through feeling and assumption, suddenly the entire game changes. It's no longer about external qualifications or worthiness metrics. It's about making a simple decision, the decision to feel abundant now, to assume it's already yours, to live from that state regardless of what your senses are reporting. This is a decision available to absolutely everyone, in every moment. What's happening behind the scenes when you make this decision is that you're stepping out of one state and into another. You're not changing your external world first and hoping your feelings will follow. You're changing your internal world and allowing the external to rearrange itself accordingly. This shift in perspective, this understanding that you have the power to choose your state regardless of circumstances, is what separates those who manifest abundance from those who remain stuck. If you're ready to step into that state regardless of your past, comment, "I choose abundance now." The most common mistake people make when they finally understand this power is thinking they need to wait for the right moment. They say, "I'll assume abundance when I get that job," or "I'll feel wealthy when my situation improves," or "I'll step into that state when things settle down." But there is no right time except this moment. Your imagination doesn't sit around waiting for permission from the outer world to assume a new state. It doesn't need your circumstances to cooperate before you can claim what you desire. You claim it now in this present moment, and then the outer world adjusts to match your assumption. This is where most people lose their power, in the waiting. They're waiting for conditions to be perfect, for signs that it's safe to believe, for proof that it's working before they fully commit. But that waiting itself is the very thing blocking the manifestation. When you wait for external validation before assuming your desired state, you're giving your power away to circumstances. You're saying, "The outer world is more real than my imagination, so I'll let it dictate how I feel and what I assume." That decision keeps you trapped in whatever state your current circumstances reflect. The only thing that can truly stop your manifestation is your own doubt. Not the economy, not your current bank balance, not other people's skepticism, not your past failures. Just your doubt. When you waver between believing and disbelieving, between feeling abundant and feeling poor, between knowing and hoping, you're creating conflicting signals in consciousness. And conflicting signals produce inconsistent results, or often no results at all. The journey requires commitment, not blind faith, but a conscious decision to persist in the assumption, regardless of what your senses temporarily show you. Now, here's the revelation that changes everything about how you approach manifestation. You are not begging some external force to grant your wish. You're not petitioning a distant God, hoping it will hear your prayers and decide you're worthy enough to receive. The entire framework shifts when you understand that the statement, "I am," is God. When you say, "I am abundant," you're not asking for abundance, you're commanding your world to reflect that assumption. You are the operant power. Your consciousness is the only creative force in your reality. This isn't arrogance or delusion. This is recognizing the actual mechanics of how manifestation works. There is no intermediary between your imagination and your experience. There's no external authority that must approve your desires. The moment you assume something in consciousness, the moment you feel it to be true, you set into motion all the forces necessary to manifest it. You don't convince anyone. You don't persuade the universe. You simply claim your state, and reality reorganizes itself accordingly. The impact of understanding this is profound. It means you stop looking outside yourself for validation, for permission, for circumstances to change before you can feel differently. You realize that every single thing in your experience is coming from within you, from the state you're occupying. And if it's all coming from within, then you have total control over what you experience by choosing which state to occupy. This puts you back in the driver's seat of your life. If you're understanding your true creative power, write in the comments, "I am the creator." Let me share a story that perfectly illustrates this principle in action. There was a school teacher who discovered these teachings and immediately began applying them. Every single night for 2 years, she visualized herself wealthy. She saw herself with money in the bank. She imagined paying her bills easily. She pictured the life she wanted. She was dedicated, consistent, disciplined. Yet nothing changed. Her salary stayed the same. Her financial situation remained stuck, and she was growing increasingly frustrated and exhausted. The problem wasn't her dedication. The problem was the energy behind her practice. She was trying to force abundance into existence through sheer effort and willpower. Every night, she would strain and push, attempting to make it happen, attempting to convince herself and the universe that she deserved it. She was working so hard at manifestation that it had become another exhausting job. And here's the hidden truth she hadn't yet discovered. You cannot force consciousness into a new state. You cannot effort your way into the feeling of abundance. What she was doing, without realizing it, was strengthening the very state she was trying to escape. By trying so hard, by pushing and straining, she was confirming to herself that she didn't yet have what she wanted. The effort itself was a confession of lack. It was like trying to relax by tensing every muscle in your body. The harder she tried, the further away abundance seemed to move. One evening, completely exhausted from years of trying, she made a different decision. Instead of visualizing some future version of herself with money, instead of hoping and wishing and working at it, she simply asked herself a question. How would I feel right now if I already had abundance? Not how she would feel someday when it arrived. How would she feel right this moment if the money was already in her account, if her needs were already met, if financial security was already her reality? And then something shifted. For the first time, she stopped trying to create the feeling and instead allowed it to rise naturally within her. She felt the relief. She felt the ease. She felt the freedom of knowing her bills were handled, her future was secure, her desires were met. And in that moment, she wasn't hoping anymore. She was experiencing it. The feeling was real, present, tangible. She had moved from effort to rest, from forcing to allowing, from striving to simply being. This transformation in her approach changed everything. Within days, she noticed something remarkable. She stopped obsessively checking her bank account. She stopped worrying about money before she went to sleep. She stopped feeling that constant low-level anxiety that had been her companion for years. An inner calm settled over her, a knowing that it was already done. And that knowing, that shift from trying to make it happen to resting in the assumption that it had already happened, that was the actual turning point where abundance became inevitable. The journey from efforting to allowing is one of the most critical transitions in manifestation. When you're still in the energy of trying to make it happen, you're operating from lack. But when you shift into the energy of allowing it to unfold from a state of already having it, everything changes behind the scenes of your reality. If you've been efforting and you're ready to allow instead, type, "I'm ready to rest in it." What happened next in the teacher's story reveals the most common mistake people make without even realizing it. Someone asked her, "When you were visualizing abundance every night for those 2 years, how did you feel?" She thought about it for a moment and answered honestly, "I felt hopeful. I felt hopeful that one day I would have money." And there it was, the entire problem revealed in a single sentence. Hope, as beautiful as it sounds, was keeping her desire locked in the future. Every time she felt hopeful, she was essentially saying to herself and to consciousness, "I don't have it yet, but maybe someday, if things work out, if I'm lucky, if I do this right, then perhaps it will come." Hope is always oriented toward tomorrow. It lives in the realm of not yet. And as long as you're feeling hopeful about something, you're confirming that it hasn't arrived, that it's still separate from you, that you're still waiting for it. The transformation happened when she stopped feeling hopeful and started feeling fulfilled. She stopped projecting abundance into some distant future and brought it into the present moment. She stopped saying, "I hope I'll have money," and started feeling, "I have abundance now." That shift from future-oriented hope to present-moment knowing is what changed everything. Because consciousness only creates from what you feel to be true right now, not from what you hope might be true someday. This is the hidden truth that so many people miss. They think their visualizations aren't working. They think the law doesn't apply to them. But really, they're simply operating from the wrong feeling state. They're hoping instead of knowing, wishing instead of assuming, trying instead of being. And each of those states creates a completely different reality. Here's what Florence Scovel Shinn understood so clearly. Your bank account is empty because you feel empty inside. Your financial struggle exists because you're living in an inner state of struggle. Your lack of opportunities reflects an inner state of limitation. Your outer world is not creating your inner state. Your inner state is creating your outer world. It's a perfect mirror, always reflecting back exactly what you're projecting from within. This is not opinion or philosophy. This is law, as reliable and consistent as gravity. When you change your inner state, your outer world must change to match it. Not might change, not could change if you're lucky, must change. It has no choice. The outer world has no independent power to resist the assumptions you hold in consciousness. But here's where people get stuck. They wait for the outer world to change first before they allow themselves to feel differently. They say, "Show me the money, then I'll feel abundant." But that's backwards. That's trying to see the reflection change without changing what's standing in front of the mirror. The decision you must make is to feel abundant now, regardless of what your senses report. Feel financially secure now, even if your account shows lack. Feel successful now, even if your circumstances suggest otherwise. When you make that bold decision to change your inner state first, you set into motion forces that must bring your outer world into alignment. The outer manifestation is inevitable. Once the inner state is firmly established, if this is making sense to you, comment below. Inner state creates outer reality. So the question becomes, how do you actually generate this feeling of abundance when your current reality shows the opposite? The answer is simpler than most people realize, though it requires a shift in how you approach your practice. Instead of spending time visualizing some future version of yourself with money in the bank, instead of imagining the day when you finally receive abundance, you stop projecting into the future entirely. You bring it into the now. You sit quietly and ask yourself one powerful question. How would I feel right this moment if I had more than enough money? Not how you'll feel when it happens. Not how you'd like to feel someday. How would you feel right now in this present moment if your bank account was overflowing, if your bills were handled, if financial security was your current reality? And then you don't just think about that question, you let yourself actually experience the feeling. You immerse yourself in it completely. You feel the relief washing over you, the tension leaving your shoulders. You feel the ease of knowing you can buy what you need without checking the price. You feel the freedom of making decisions based on desire rather than limitation. This isn't pretending. This isn't lying to yourself. This is accessing a state that already exists in consciousness, because all states exist simultaneously. Abundance is as real as lack. You're simply choosing which one to occupy. When you allow yourself to fully feel this state, even for a few minutes, something profound happens behind the scenes. Your consciousness begins to accept this feeling as your new normal. The more you return to this feeling, the more natural it becomes, until eventually it's not something you're trying to create. It's simply who you are. What happened to the teacher illustrates the sequence perfectly. Within just a few days of shifting into this feeling state, she noticed changes occurring inside herself. She stopped obsessively checking her bank account 5 times a day, hoping somehow the numbers had magically increased. She stopped lying awake at night, calculating her expenses and worrying about how she'd make ends meet. She stopped feeling that constant knot of anxiety in her stomach every time she thought about money. An unexpected peace settled over her, as if the problem had already been solved, even though nothing had changed yet in her external circumstances. This is the critical sequence that most people get wrong. The inner peace came before the outer manifestation. The feeling of security arrived before the actual money. The transformation in consciousness preceded the transformation in circumstances. She wasn't waiting for her reality to change so she could finally feel peaceful. She felt peaceful first, and that peace was the very thing that created the change in her. Reality. Most people would have dismissed this inner peace as meaningless because their bank account still showed the same numbers. They would have said, "Sure, I feel better, but nothing's actually changed." But that inner peace was everything. It was the evidence that her consciousness had shifted states. It was the confirmation that her assumption had taken root. And once an assumption takes root in consciousness, physical manifestation becomes inevitable. It's not a question of if, only when. If you're experiencing or ready to experience this inner peace before outer evidence, right? Peace comes first. 2 weeks after she experienced that profound inner shift, something remarkable happened that perfectly demonstrates how consciousness creates reality. The teacher received a phone call from a private school across town, a school she had never applied to, a position she didn't even know existed. The headmaster had somehow heard about her work and was personally inviting her to join their faculty. The salary? Nearly double what she was currently making. The opportunity appeared seemingly out of nowhere, with no effort on her part, no applications submitted, no networking events attended. Most people would call this coincidence or luck. They'd say she was in the right place at the right time, that the universe finally decided to bless her. But that completely misses what actually happened. The opportunity didn't create her inner peace. Her inner peace created the opportunity. The job offer wasn't the cause of her abundance. Her assumption of already being abundant was the cause of the job offer. She had changed her state in consciousness, and her external world had no choice but to rearrange itself to match that new state. This is the hidden mechanics of how manifestation actually works. When you shift your inner state, you don't just change how you feel. You literally change the circumstances and opportunities that can reach you. You become a vibrational match for different possibilities. Doors that were previously invisible suddenly appear. People think of you for opportunities they wouldn't have considered before. Resources flow toward you through channels you never expected. It all happens naturally, effortlessly, as a direct result of the state you're occupying in consciousness. The profound revelation here is understanding the sequence. If the teacher had waited for the job offer to arrive before allowing herself to feel abundant, she would still be waiting. The job offer couldn't come until she assumed the state that would attract it. Her feeling poor was literally blocking that opportunity from reaching her. The moment she shifted into feeling abundant, she removed the barrier, and the manifestation unfolded naturally through what appeared to be random circumstances, but was actually the perfect orchestration of her assumption externalizing itself. This is what Florence Scovel Shinn meant when she taught that your outer world is a mirror of your inner world. Every circumstance, every opportunity, every limitation you experience is showing you the state you've been occupying. When you don't like what the mirror is showing you, you don't try to change the reflection. You change what's standing in front of the mirror. You change your inner state, and the reflection must change accordingly. The impact of truly understanding this cannot be overstated. It means you're never stuck. No matter how dire your circumstances appear, no matter how long you've been in lack, no matter what your history has been, you can shift your state right now and set into motion an entirely different set of circumstances. The teacher's transformation didn't take years. It didn't require massive action or external resources. It required a simple decision to feel abundant before seeing evidence of abundance. And that decision changed everything. What's happening behind the scenes when you make this shift is that you're accessing a different version of reality that was always available to you. You're not creating something new. You're stepping into a state that already exists. And when you step into that state fully, when you commit to it completely, the physical world has no choice but to reflect it back to you. If you're understanding how your inner state creates opportunities, comment, "I create my circumstances." Now, I want to share a story from Florence Scovel Shinn's own life that demonstrates this principle in the most powerful way. During one particularly harsh winter, she found herself longing to escape the cold and spend the season in Barbados. The warmth, the ocean, the peace, she could almost taste it. But there was one significant problem. She had no money for the passage, no savings, no obvious way to get there, and winter was already upon her. By every logical measure, the trip was impossible. She went to her teacher, Abdullah, and explained her desire. Now, Abdullah was a master of consciousness, someone who understood these laws at the deepest level. He looked at her and said something that seemed absurd on the surface. "You are in Barbados." She tried to correct him, saying, "No, Abdullah, I'm here in the cold. I want to be in Barbados, but I don't have the money." And he said again, more firmly this time, "You are in Barbados." What Abdullah was teaching her in that moment was the most critical distinction in all of manifestation. The difference between thinking of your desire and thinking from your desire. Most people spend their time thinking of what they want. They picture it in the distance. They imagine it as something separate from themselves, something they're moving toward but haven't yet reached. They think about Barbados while being fully anchored in the cold reality of where they are. This keeps the desire perpetually in the future, always out of reach. But Abdullah instructed her to think from Barbados, not of it. He told her to make it so real in her. Imagination that her physical senses had no choice but to surrender to the vividness of her inner experience. He said to feel the warm breeze on her skin, to smell the salt air, to hear the sound of the ocean waves, to see the palm trees swaying, not as a future fantasy, but as a present reality, to make her imagination more real than what her five senses were reporting. This is where the real transformation happens, where the journey from lack to abundance truly begins. When you can make your imagined reality more vivid, more tangible, more real than your current circumstances, you've mastered the secret. You're no longer a person in the cold wishing to be warm. You're experiencing warmth in consciousness right now. And consciousness doesn't distinguish between what's physically present and what's vividly imagined. To consciousness, if you're feeling it, experiencing it, living in it, then it's real. Florence practiced this every night. She didn't imagine the journey to Barbados. She didn't visualize receiving money for a ticket. She simply assumed she was already there. She felt herself in her father's house, felt the tropical air, heard the familiar sounds of home. She made it so real that the line between imagination and physical reality blurred. And something profound happened inside her. A strange certainty began to grow, a knowing that had no logical basis but felt absolutely true. If you're ready to think from your desire instead of it, write in the comments, "I'm already there." After several nights of living in this vivid imaginal experience, something extraordinary happened inside Florence's consciousness. A strange certainty began to emerge, a knowing that defied all logic and reason. She stopped worrying about how she would get to Barbados. She stopped checking her finances, stopped looking for opportunities, stopped scheming and planning. The question of how became completely irrelevant because the state of being in Barbados felt so absolutely real in her consciousness that it was no longer a future possibility. It was a present fact. This is one of the clearest signs that your assumption has truly taken root. When the how stops mattering, when you stop obsessing over the means and methods, when you stop trying to figure out the path from here to there, it means you've successfully shifted states. You're no longer a person trying to get somewhere. You're already there in consciousness. And consciousness is the only place where creation actually happens. The physical world is just the delayed reflection of what's already been established within. Florence described this state as feeling so certain that she would be in Barbados that worrying about it seemed absurd. It wasn't blind faith or forced belief. It was genuine knowing, the same way you know your own name. She had successfully made her imagination more real than her physical circumstances. And in doing so, she had claimed her desire in the only place that matters, in consciousness itself. 3 weeks passed. Then one morning, she received a letter from her brother. He wrote that he had experienced a sudden, strong desire to have the entire family together for Christmas in Barbados. The feeling had come over him unexpectedly, urgently, and he couldn't shake it. Enclosed in the letter was a steamship ticket with her name on it. The passage was paid. The trip was arranged. Everything she had assumed in consciousness had manifested in physical form, and it came through a channel she never could have predicted or planned. This is the revelation that changes everything about how you approach manifestation. Her brother's decision wasn't some random coincidence. It wasn't luck or good timing. Her assumption that she was already in Barbados created the means by which she physically got there. Her consciousness, operating according to law, set into motion all the circumstances and impulses necessary to bring her assumption into physical reality. Her brother thought it was his own idea, his own spontaneous desire, but it was actually her assumption externalizing itself through him. This is how consciousness works. It doesn't violate anyone's free will. It doesn't manipulate or control. It simply creates the circumstances, the impulses, the decisions in other people that naturally lead to the fulfillment of your assumption. The means always appear after the state is assumed, never before. You don't need to figure out the path. The path reveals itself once you've claimed the destination in consciousness. The impact of understanding this is profound. It means you never need to know how your desire will manifest. Your job isn't to figure out the logistics or create the pathway. Your only job is to assume the state of already having what you desire and persist in that state until it hardens into fact. The how takes care of itself. If you're letting go of needing to know how, consciousness knows the way. What's crucial to understand about Florence's story is that her brother's decision wasn't the cause of her trip. It was the effect of her assumption. Before she assumed she was in Barbados in consciousness, her brother had no thought of sending her a ticket. He wasn't planning a family gathering. The idea hadn't even crossed his mind. But the moment she firmly established that state within herself, the moment she made it real in her imagination, she set into motion invisible forces that had to bring her assumption into physical manifestation. Her brother's sudden desire was simply the universe's way of creating a bridge between her inner reality and her outer experience. This is the hidden truth that most people miss entirely. They think external circumstances are independent forces acting upon them randomly, but external circumstances are actually the externalization of internal states. Every person, every opportunity, every decision that appears to come from outside of you is actually being influenced by the state you're occupying in consciousness. You're not at the mercy of a random universe. You're experiencing a perfectly orchestrated reflection of your assumptions. Now, I want to share another story that illustrates what happens when you try to control the how instead of simply resting in the assumption. There was a man who desperately wanted to manifest a specific sum of money to start a business. He had calculated the exact amount he needed, and he began working with these principles. But instead of simply assuming he had the money and letting consciousness bring it through whatever channel it chose, he started dictating how it should come. He visualized winning the lottery, so he bought tickets religiously. He imagined a wealthy investor approaching him, so he spent hours networking, trying to force those connections. He even visualized finding money on the street. Every night, he would cycle through these different scenarios, trying to figure out which channel would deliver his manifestation. And month after month, nothing happened. The lottery tickets were worthless. The investors never appeared. No money showed up in unexpected places. He grew increasingly frustrated, wondering why the law wasn't working for him when it seemed to work for others. The problem wasn't the law, the problem was his approach. By trying to control how the money would come, he was actually blocking it from coming at all. Your consciousness is infinitely creative. It sees possibilities and pathways that your limited logical mind cannot conceive. When you try to force your desire through specific channels, when you dictate the exact means by which it must manifest, you're essentially saying to consciousness, I don't trust you. I need to control this process myself. And in that lack of trust, you create resistance. You limit the infinite ways abundance could reach you by insisting it must come through the narrow channels you've chosen. The transformation happened for this man when he finally let go. When he stopped trying to figure out the how, stopped scheming and planning and forcing. He simply assumed he had the money, felt the security and freedom of it, and released his grip on controlling the process. That surrender, that decision to trust consciousness instead of his own limited reasoning, opened the floodgates. If you're ready to release control and trust the process, write, "I surrender the how." Within 2 months of making that shift, of letting go of his need to control how the money would arrive, something completely unexpected happened. An elderly aunt he rarely spoke to passed away, and in her will, she left him an inheritance. He hadn't even known she had any significant money. He certainly hadn't expected anything from her. But here's what makes this story so powerful. The inheritance was 3 times larger than the amount he had been desperately trying to manifest through his controlled scenarios. Think about that for a moment. All those months of buying lottery tickets, networking with wealthy people, trying to force specific outcomes, none of it worked. But the moment he surrendered the how, the moment he simply rested in the feeling of already having the money and trusted consciousness to bring it through whatever channel it chose, the perfect pathway opened up. And it came through a route he never could have predicted, planned, or forced. This reveals something profound about how consciousness operates. Your logical mind can only see a limited number of possibilities based on your past experience and current knowledge. You can imagine the obvious channels: lottery, investor, unexpected windfall. But consciousness sees infinitely more possibilities. It knows about the elderly aunt's will. It knows about opportunities that haven't even materialized yet. It sees connections and pathways that exist completely outside your awareness. When you insist on controlling the how, you're essentially telling infinite consciousness, "No, don't use any of those other pathways. Only bring my desire through these specific channels I've chosen." And in doing so, you block the very channels through which your manifestation was trying to come. You limit infinite creativity to your finite understanding. It's like standing at the base of a mountain with 1,000 paths to the summit, but you insist on taking only the one steep, dangerous path you can see from where you're standing, ignoring all the easier, more direct routes that exist just beyond your current view. The journey from controlling to trusting is one of the most critical transformations in manifestation. Control comes from fear. Fear that if you don't figure it out, it won't happen. Fear that consciousness can't be trusted. Fear that you must micromanage every detail or your desire will slip away. But trust comes from understanding how the law actually works. When you truly grasp that consciousness is infinitely more intelligent than your logical mind, that it sees what you cannot see, knows what you cannot know, you naturally relax into allowing rather than forcing. This doesn't mean you become passive or stop taking action. It means your actions come from inspiration rather than desperation. You move when you feel moved. You act when the path becomes clear, but you're not frantically trying to make things happen through sheer willpower. You're resting in the assumption that it's already done and allowing the manifestation to unfold through whatever means consciousness chooses. The impact of this shift cannot be overstated. When you stop blocking the flow with your need to control, when you surrender the how and simply maintain the assumption of already having what you desire, you open yourself to receive through channels you never imagined. The man's inheritance came because he finally got out of his own way. If you're learning to trust instead of control, comment, "I trust consciousness completely." Now I want to reveal something that completely transforms how you understand manifestation. Something Florence Scovel Shinn called one of the most liberating truths you could ever grasp. Creation is finished. Everything that can ever exist already exists right now in consciousness. Not as a future possibility, not as something that needs to be built or earned, but as a present reality waiting for you to claim it. Poverty exists as a state. Wealth exists as a state. Lack exists. Abundance exists. Struggle exists. Ease exists. They're all there, all available, all fully formed in consciousness right this moment. You're not creating abundance from scratch. You're simply entering into a state that already exists. You're choosing which mansion to occupy in the infinite house of consciousness. And the moment you assume a state, the moment you step into it and claim it as yours, it begins to externalize itself as your lived experience. This is what the ancient scripture means when it says, "I am God," declaring the end from the beginning. The end already exists. All possible ends exist simultaneously. Your financial freedom already exists. Your dream life already exists. Your abundance already exists. Not in some distant future, not as a reward you might receive if you're good enough, but right now as a fully formed state in consciousness. The question isn't whether these states exist. The question is, which state are you going to assume? Your task, your only task, is to assume the end you desire and persist in that assumption until it hardens into fact. You don't build your way there. You don't earn your way there. You don't wait for circumstances to gradually improve. You assume the end result now, in consciousness, and you persist in living from that state, regardless of what your physical senses are reporting. This persistence is key, because your assumption must become so natural, so habitual, so deeply embedded in your consciousness that it stops being something you're trying to do and becomes simply who you are. Most people approach manifestation as if they're trying to create something new, trying to bring into existence something that doesn't currently exist. But that's not how it works. You're not creating, you're selecting. You're choosing which already existing state to occupy. It's like changing the channel on a television. Every channel exists simultaneously, broadcasting its content. You're not creating the show. You're simply tuning into it. When you assume abundance, you're tuning your consciousness to the frequency where abundance already exists. The transformation in your approach happens when you stop asking, "How do I create abundance?" and start asking, "How do I enter into the state of abundance that already exists?" The first question implies lack and creation. The second question implies completion and selection. Can you feel the difference? One is reaching for something you don't have. The other is claiming something that's already yours. This shift in mindset, this understanding that you're not building but claiming, not creating but entering, changes everything about your journey. It removes the pressure. It eliminates the sense of having to prove yourself worthy. It dissolves the anxiety of wondering if it's possible. Of course it's possible. It already exists. Your only decision is whether you're going to assume it or not. If this truth is resonating with you, type in the comments, "I claim what already exists." Now here's where most people get tripped up even after understanding that all states exist and they simply need to assume the one they desire. They spend hours visualizing. They create elaborate mental movies of their abundant future. They see themselves with money in the bank, living in their dream home, driving their ideal car. They dedicate time every single day to this practice, and yet nothing changes. The reason? They're visualizing without feeling, and visualization without feeling is completely powerless. You can imagine abundance for hours every day, but if you don't actually feel abundant while you're imagining it, if that feeling tone of already having it isn't present, you're just daydreaming. You're entertaining yourself with pleasant thoughts, but you're not impressing anything upon consciousness. It's the feeling that creates. It's the feeling that hardens your assumption into fact. The images are just tools to generate the feeling. They're not the creative force themselves. This is the hidden truth that separates those who successfully manifest from those who just keep trying. The successful ones have discovered that it's not about how clear the visualization is, or how many details they can imagine. It's about how deeply they can feel the reality of already having what they desire. That feeling is the substance. Everything else is just scaffolding to help you access that feeling. So the critical question becomes, how do you generate this feeling when your current circumstances show the complete opposite? Florence Scovel Shinn taught a simple but profoundly effective technique. You ask yourself a very specific question, and the exact wording matters. Don't ask, how will I feel when my desire is fulfilled? That keeps it in the future. Don't ask, how would I like to feel? That's just wishful thinking. Ask yourself, how would I feel right now if my desire were already fulfilled? Can you feel the difference in those questions? The first two keep you at a distance from your desire, looking at it from outside. But the third one brings you directly into the experience. It collapses time. It makes the fulfillment present, not future. And when you ask that question sincerely and allow yourself to actually feel the answer, something shifts inside you. You're no longer imagining having it someday. You're experiencing having it now. This is where the real transformation occurs, where the journey from separation to fulfillment happens. You sit quietly. You ask yourself that question, and then you don't think about the answer. You feel it. How would you feel right now if your bank account showed abundance? Not excitement about future possibility, but the actual felt sense of security, relief, freedom that comes with knowing your needs are met. Let that feeling rise within you. Don't force it, don't manufacture it. Just allow it to emerge naturally as you contemplate the question. The impact of this simple practice, done consistently, is extraordinary. You're training your consciousness to occupy the state of fulfillment rather than the state of seeking. You're making the feeling of already having it more familiar than the feeling of lacking it. And as that feeling becomes your natural state, your dominant assumption, your external world has no choice but to conform to it. If you're ready to prioritize feeling over visualization, comment, "Feeling is everything." Now, let me share with you one of the most powerful practices Florence Scovel Shinn taught, something you can do tonight that will begin shifting your consciousness immediately. Before you fall asleep, take a few moments to review your day. But here's the critical part. Don't just replay what happened. Revise it. If anything occurred today that implied lack, that reinforced poverty, that made you feel limited in any way, rewrite it in your imagination so that it implies abundance instead. Did you check your bank account today and feel that sinking feeling when you saw the balance? In your imagination, revise that moment. See yourself checking the account and feeling relieved, satisfied, secure, because there's more than enough. Did someone make a comment that implied you couldn't afford something? Revise the conversation. Hear them saying something that acknowledges your abundance. Did you worry about an upcoming bill? Revise that worry into calm confidence, knowing the money is already there. The purpose of this practice isn't to deny what happened or pretend reality doesn't exist. The purpose is to impress a new assumption upon your subconscious mind during the most receptive time, right before you fall asleep. Your subconscious doesn't distinguish between what actually happened and what you vividly imagine. If you go to sleep replaying moments of lack, you're reinforcing the state of poverty. But if you go to sleep after revising your day to reflect abundance, you're impressing the state of wealth upon your subconscious, and that state will begin to manifest in your tomorrow. This is working behind the scenes of your awareness, reprogramming the deep assumptions that govern your experience. Every night that you fall asleep in the feeling of abundance rather than lack, you're strengthening that state in consciousness. You're making it more natural, more habitual, more dominant. And as it becomes your dominant state, your external circumstances must shift to reflect it. But revision isn't just for nighttime. Florence taught about what she called the Sabbath state. And this has nothing to do with a particular day of the week. The Sabbath is a state of rest, a state of knowing your desire is already fulfilled. It's the opposite of striving, worrying, and forcing. It's the calm certainty that says, it is done. Throughout your day, whenever worry about money creeps in, whenever anxiety about the future tries to grip you, whenever doubt starts to whisper, you stop. You take a breath. You ask yourself that powerful question. How would I feel right now if my desire were already fulfilled? And you let yourself enter that state for just a moment. You rest in it. You feel the relief, the peace, the security. This is entering the Sabbath. This is returning to the state of fulfillment instead of remaining in the state of lack. You don't need to spend hours doing this. A few seconds is enough. But do it frequently. Make it a habit. Every time worry surfaces, use it as a trigger to return to the Sabbath state, to rest in the assumption of already having what you desire. The more you practice this return, this deliberate shifting from worry to rest, the more natural it becomes, until eventually you're simply living in that state continuously. If you're committing to this practice tonight, write, "I revise and rest." Here's a practical exercise that will accelerate your transformation more than almost anything else. For the next 7 days, I want you to make every single decision from the state of abundance rather than the state of lack. This doesn't mean spending money recklessly or making financially irresponsible choices. It means changing the question you ask yourself when making decisions. Most people, when considering a purchase or opportunity, immediately ask, "Can I afford this?" That question comes from lack. It confirms poverty. It reinforces the assumption that you don't have enough. Instead, ask yourself, "Do I want this?" Make your decisions based on desire rather than limitation. Think from abundance, not toward it. If you're at the grocery store, don't ask whether you can afford the organic produce. Ask whether you truly want it. The decision might still be no, but it's coming from a different state entirely. This practice trains your consciousness to occupy the state of abundance consistently throughout your day. It's not just about the moments when you're actively visualizing or feeling. It's about the hundreds of small decisions you make daily. Each one is either reinforcing lack or reinforcing abundance. When you consistently make decisions from abundance, even in small ways, you're telling your subconscious that abundance is your natural state. And your subconscious will work tirelessly to make that assumption true in your external experience. The impact of this shift in how you make decisions is profound. You start carrying yourself differently. Your energy changes. The way you move through the world shifts. And people and opportunities respond to that energy in ways you wouldn't expect. You're literally broadcasting a different frequency, and that frequency attracts different circumstances. Now, there's one more practice that amplifies everything we've discussed, and it's perhaps the most powerful state you can occupy: genuine gratitude. Not gratitude for what you hope will come, but gratitude for what you know is already yours in consciousness. Most people say, "I'll be grateful when the money arrives. I'll be thankful when my situation improves." But that's backwards. That gratitude is conditional, future-based, and it confirms you don't have what you want yet. Real gratitude assumes fulfillment. It feels thankful now for the abundance that already exists in consciousness, even before your senses can confirm it. This kind of gratitude saturates your entire being with the reality of your desire. When you're truly grateful for something, you can only be grateful because you assume you have it. You don't feel grateful. For things you don't possess, gratitude is a response to having, not lacking. So tonight, before you sleep, spend a few moments feeling genuinely grateful for the abundance that's already yours. Don't wait for the bank account to change. Don't postpone your gratitude until circumstances shift. Feel it now. Thank consciousness for the financial freedom you're experiencing, for the security you feel, for the opportunities flowing to you. Make that gratitude so real, so vivid, that it feels like you're giving thanks for something that's already manifested rather than something you're hoping will come. If you're choosing gratitude before evidence, comment, "Grateful now, not later." When you practice gratitude for what you've already claimed in consciousness, something remarkable happens. Those signs we talked about at the beginning of this entire journey, the inner calm, the strange certainty, the peace that doesn't make logical sense, the automatic shift in your inner conversations, the lack of need for anyone else to validate your vision, these start appearing naturally. And here's what you must understand. These signs are not predictions that abundance might come in the future. They are confirmations that you've already claimed it in consciousness right now. This is the revelation that changes everything. When you feel that inner peace, even though your bank account hasn't changed yet, you're not just hoping it will work. That peace is the evidence that it's already working. When you notice your mental conversations have shifted from rehearsing poverty to naturally assuming abundance, you're not just being positive, you're witnessing the transformation of your state. When criticism from others no longer disturbs you, when you stop obsessively checking for external proof, when you feel certain without knowing why, these are all confirmations that your consciousness has successfully assumed the state of abundance. Most people dismiss these inner signs because they're looking for outer evidence. They think, sure, I feel peaceful, but that doesn't mean anything until I see the money. But they have it completely backwards. The inner transformation is the real manifestation. The outer world showing you the money is just the delayed echo of what's already been established within. The signs in consciousness come first, always. And when you see them, when you recognize them, you know with absolute certainty that the physical manifestation is inevitable. The journey we've been on together in this conversation has been building to this moment. The moment where you recognize that the power to transform your financial reality isn't something you need to develop over years or earn through suffering. It's available to you right now, this very moment. You don't need more knowledge. You don't need to be more spiritual. You don't need better circumstances. You just need to make a decision. The decision to assume the state of abundance now and persist in it. Tonight, before you close your eyes to sleep, I want you to do something that could change everything. Lie in your bed, close your eyes, and ask yourself that powerful question one more time. How would I feel if I were already abundant? And then don't think about the answer. Don't analyze it. Don't create a mental list. Just feel it. Let that feeling of financial security, freedom, and relief rise within you like a wave. Let it saturate every cell of your being. Feel what it's like to know your needs are met, your future is secure, your desires are fulfilled. And then, while still immersed in that feeling, allow yourself to drift off to sleep. Your subconscious mind is most receptive in those final moments before unconsciousness. What you feel to be true as you fall asleep becomes impressed upon your deepest consciousness. If you fall asleep in the feeling of abundance, you're programming your subconscious to accept abundance as your natural state. And when your subconscious accepts it, your outer world must change to match it. This is law. If you're ready to claim your abundance tonight, write in the comments, "Tonight I sleep abundant." You've stayed with me through this entire journey, and that tells me something important about you. You're not someone who's content with surface-level understanding. You're genuinely committed to transforming your relationship with abundance, and that commitment is exactly what makes this work. If this resonated with you, if you felt something shift inside as we explored these principles together, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel. I share these teachings because I believe they have the power to genuinely change lives, and if you found value here, there's so much more we can explore together in future videos. And let me know you made it all the way through by leaving a comment saying, "I felt the shift." When I see those comments, I know these teachings are landing where they need to, and it genuinely means something to me to know you're applying this in your life. If you'd hit that like button, it helps more people discover these principles who might be exactly where you were before watching this. It's a simple gesture that extends this conversation to others who are ready for it. There's a video right here that goes even deeper into how your inner world creates your outer reality in ways you might not have considered yet. Click and continue with me over there. I think you'll find it's the perfect next step on this journey. Thank you for being here. Your abundance is already yours in consciousness. Now let it unfold in your world.